And here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore. We never sit out. We're your hosts, MD and CD. Today, we're talking bowl games. And Merry Christmas. It is Christmas week bowl games. Some of the best, right? Because you got, Monday, bowl game. Tuesday, bowl game. And then you got Christmas Day. And then it's action packed football for, the next like 4 days, 5 days after that. So we're pretty blessed in this spot. Hopefully, you guys have been following along for bowl game coverage throughout the bowl season and the college football playoffs as well. We're coming off the college football playoffs, where we can get into some of that, but maybe not the most competitive games that we've seen. But then again, how many competitive college football playoff games have we ever had in the first round of any of the 14 playoffs? So just making sure that you know that that doesn't get overlooked, but. Yeah, so for the agenda, we're going to talk about 11 bowl games, and we're also going to talk about, of course, our bets, maybe recap a couple of our best bets from before, which CD and I are both positive on the bowl season. Hot start. We're going to have a hot finish. So, CD, how are we feeling about the rest of the bowl season here?
Pretty good right now. Obviously, the playoff gets a lot of the attention there, but I've loved bowl season so far. It's been good to us as well, obviously with our best bets, as well as our bowl pool. Like right now, I got the most projected points or potential points out there. So it's not how you start, it's how you finish, right, with these bowl pools. So it's been a lot of fun, obviously. You mentioned it. We have a huge week ahead of us. These games, or this episode, will be previewing Monday through Friday, right? All those games. I think we've got, 11 question mark 12 games or something like that in the next 5 days. It's going to be awesome, starting with the Myrtle Beach Bowl down there, home game for Coastal Carolina. It's wild.
Well, you may have the most projected, but I'm right up there with the points already secured, sitting in first place. But I guess Addison's right now in first place. So thank you, Addison, for participating. Addison got a chance to win this whole thing. They're projected one of the highest amount of points. They're 10-2 right now. Um, the best person right now is Jay Ashman 9 with 11 wins to 1 loss. So good for Jay Ashman as well. He's up there with points secured. So yeah, sorry if you didn't join the bowl pool, but it's something we like to do here on this channel, just to get involved with y'all. So loving what we got going on here. But I guess to move over, we'll briefly talk about the college football playoffs. All right, just we're gonna be brief with it because enough has been said on Twitter and whatever, whatnot. And honestly, I don't really care for it all that much. But uh, you can. The reality is, all of these spreads were over a touchdown. So like, you can't be surprised when these games result in scores that are more than a touchdown. You know, and I will say the most dominating win of that weekend belonged to Ohio State. And we talked about that beforehand. What game, right, regardless of who wins, is going to change your opinion about that team the most, right? We looked at that Tennessee Ohio State game. We're like, the winner of that game is going to be a problem for Oregon, likely. And then, obviously moving forward from there, you beat Oregon, your path to the playoffs or the national championship starts becoming a lot clearer there. So I was that's what I'll say. I don't know if you had any thoughts that you want to get off your chest as our Big Ten guy.
No, I really didn't learn much other than, oh, yeah, like reminding myself that this is the Ohio State team that the potential can be at. I mean, we felt really good about it. That was one of our best bets. We thought they would win on both sides of the ball, right? We thought they'd also show up defensively, stifle that Tennessee offense. Obviously, the injuries hurt there. You saw some turnovers in the other games there. It's a one off, right? I think. How much did we really learn? We learned that some stuff has to probably change or should change, or maybe like it's a very, very small sample size. It's a unique year, right? You've got a bunch of teams that were potential playoff competitors early in the season that really struggled. You've got a lot of poor quarterback player on the country. You've got a lot of poor wide receiver player on the country. A lot of things going on right now. People still handling roster management, transfer portal. I would caution and be, diligent about what you're doing and these assumptions that you're going to make, right, in terms of reactionary based on what happened in these playoff games. Obviously, I thought what I will say the great thing was, how about those home playoff sites? All four fan bases showed up fantastically. You saw opposing fans travel, get to see new sites, out of conference games. It was really, really cool. I think that's something that hopefully they continue to keep doing and maybe even expand it once you get toward the quarterfinals and whatnot. I think that would be really, really awesome. Yeah, I mean, what else did we really learn? The teams that won: Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, right? I mean, I took all the teams. I took them, none of those teams to cover, right, in those games on our show last week. And listen, I mean, turnovers, a lot of things happen. I don't think the scores were quite as blown out of proportion as maybe they did see, or maybe in Indiana's
You
case, you
did
did
take
see.
Clemson to cover.
That's what I'm saying. No, I took SMU to cover, I took Clemson to
Oh,
cover, and I took Indiana to cover as well. So I was wrong on all of them. My point is, like, I don't really change my opinion on those three teams at all. I was like, oh, yeah, those teams played well. They were at home, and they showed that they were more physically superior to those teams. Great, right? What's new? And the reality is, like, yeah, it's a lot. Lots been said. Don't really need to echo it. I think we should just also appreciate it too. It's a lot of fun, those big atmospheres. We'll see what happens in the second round. Before you see, SMU, or after you see SMU in Indiana, Tennessee, right, Clemson get outmatched in some of those spots in some of those games. Don't just be quick to just assume that that's going to happen to Boise State and or Arizona State as well, right? Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. I just kind of go with the flow and enjoy it, and
I
don't
mean
make
that.
these crazy, like, it's. I hate, like, the extremes. It's like one or the other. Like, oh, you didn't compete in this game in one game on the
Yeah,
road against a very good football team in cold weather. You're terrible. And it's like, no, hold on a minute now, right? They beat a lot of teams that, are, yeah, sure, maybe they're not the best teams, but all these other teams also lost to teams that aren't maybe the best teams as well. So it's interesting. We've never had a season in college football where we have had more. We've had 12 like actual championship contenders, 12 teams that deserve and are the ability to win a national title. We've never ever had that. And why did we
I
think that was going to happen when
yeah
we moved to a 12-team playoff?
yeah I agree, and I will say with SMU competed, dude. Like there were legitimate opportunities for them. Two pick sixes. Then you had the pick in the red zone. You missed on two fourth down conversions, so five turnovers in that football game, and then two pick sixes. Yeah, that'll flip the outcome of the game negatively in your favor. Like, I'm not saying that they play this game over again. SMU's winning this football game. I'm just saying that there were things that SMU did, like I don't know, moving the line of scrimmage at times early in the game, right? Throwing the ball effectively when it wasn't intercepted in return for a touchdown at times. I don't know. I thought SMU
Stopping
did good. I thought their
stopping
def
Penn State's offense. Yeah, their defense
yeah, I
played
thought their
more
defense
better than
played
I
well.
did.
I thought Indiana's defense played awesome. I really did. Now, is Notre Dame's offense particularly impressive? I don't know. We'll see how they fare against Georgia's defense, but I'm not like a lot of people were like really disappointed with like the competition level that we saw in those games. And yeah, maybe it wasn't like even what I expected. Like I had Indiana and SMU covering in those respective games, but I'm not. Yeah, I'm disappointed, but I'm not like shocked. Like of the results in terms of the scores. I thought the biggest beatdown was Ohio State, Texas, or sorry, Ohio State, Tennessee, and I don't think it was quite frankly close. I think other people would point to the Penn State game where like SMU only scored 10 points. All right, sure, two pick sixes and an interception in the red zone and several turnovers on fourth down. I mean, you have the ball inside the 10-yard line three times and you scored once for SMU. So it's I don't know. I think people are going to point quickly to be like SMU couldn't compete, they didn't deserve to be there, whatever. I don't know. Quite frankly, as I've stated on the show several times, I think that there are probably only six teams that actually deserve to compete for a national championship. Um, I've always been a believer in the fact that if you don't win your conference, what makes you have the ability to compete for national championship? I mean, sure, it just sucks that like Georgia can beat Texas twice and win the SEC, right? And then they can go to the national championship against Texas and lose, and Texas is considered the best team in the country. It's just, I get that's how the NFL works, but that's not what this is supposed to be. All right, this is not the NFL. This is
I'm
college football.
I'm with
That's
you
what
there.
makes these games more important. Otherwise, like, why are we playing the Texas Georgia game in October? You know,
Last thing I'll say too here is there's a formula, there's a small formula for these road teams who are over a touchdown dogs to go into hostile environments and get a win. First of all, Very, very hard. Secondly, you have to remember momentum is a big part, I believe, in college football, right? And you saw Indiana, you saw SMU have chances early in the game to go up 7-0 or more, right? Indiana through the interception. Next play, Notre Dame scores. That's a 14-point flip just right there, and momentum changing, game script changing, all that kind of stuff, right? Crowd getting into it. How about SMU going down? You mentioned the fourth down where you had a guy wide open, or you had a chance to just get the first down. Either of those things happen. That normally you see a guy like Kevin Jennings, who is as talented and as good as he is, right? He did not play well at all. Right? I'm not trying to defend his performance. I'm trying to defend the actual player. Very good football player, better than most things, right? You'll see in the SEC, honestly. But you you ask, right? If he came on the transfer portal market right now, I think he's probably the top quarterback in the portal, right? I don't think there's much debate about that, especially with his eligibility left as well. And then lastly, too, maybe I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, and Clemson, right? They did that. They went down right away and they punched in the end zone and they made that game a game for a long time, right? They really put Texas on their heels at times in that first and second half, and like it's just like that. Like one little play here and there changes the entire outcome of a
Jaden
game.
Blue, 77-yard touchdown
Yeah,
after you bring it within 7, you know?
so you had these teams, right? All six teams, or we'll call, and the Tennessee Ohio State game, right? I don't even. That was just an absolute domination, and the numbers metrically they'll show that too. But you go back to the Clemson, SMU, and Indiana, their games, right? All six of those teams, they had opportunities to make big time plays, and yes, the best teams usually make those plays.
And
But
they
the
did.
fact that, and they did exactly. And so the better teams, because they were favored, right? Statistically, they are better. They made the plays when they were there to be had. But it does not mean that SMU, nor Indiana, nor Clemson did not have a chance to win the game. They absolutely have a chance to win that game. Same goes for Boise State. Same goes for Arizona State. Now, are they going to be favored? Are they going to win every single time? No, absolutely not. And by the way, yeah, that's all. I just whatever,
Yeah, it's
man.
all right. And we'll probably have someone in the comments hate on us for even stepping in. You know, first of all,
Listen, I'm a Big Ten guy. You're an SEC guy. Like
yeah,
we are Power Two like fans, right? Of the teams we support, right, are in the Power Two, and there's a lot more talent than just in the Power Two. And by the way, like you said, if you don't finish first, second, or third in your conferences, like, do you really deserve a chance to play? I get the uneven scheduling and all that other good stuff. That's for your commissioners to figure out. That's for your presidents. You want to blame someone? Blame your presidents that voted in these schools to bring more revenue that you're never going to see, right? So your team has to play a
yep.
harder schedule. Sorry, I'm just getting
Let's
on
blame
you.
Kevin Warren. That's who we
Kevin
should blame.
Warren, Greg Sankey. I'm sorry, those two guys absolutely deserve way more of the blame than the powers that be or the committee who was thrust into an impossible lose-lose situation. Blame the people who are actually profiting off of this, right? Not you, not the fans, not these players. They're getting screwed on either side, whatever it may be.
Create divisions in those big conferences. That's really a huge fix for a lot of the schedule disparity. If the SEC wants to complain about scheduling disparity, they make divisions, right? Make sure that these other conferences make divisions. If you're a conference that has more than 12 teams, you should have divisions. All right. It's that simple. Anyways, we're done talking about college football playoffs because now we're here to talk about the bowl season. First one, we're going to head to Myrtle Beach for the Myrtle Beach Bowl. We're going to talk about Coastal Carolina, UTSA. UTSA, early in the season, and I said it in the preseason too, that this team was going to stink. Maybe I had some negative opinions about Owen McCown. However, both offensively and defensively, that team kind of turned it around. And Coastal Carolina did the opposite. They had an absolute walloping of Jacksonville State, who ended up being a pretty good football team early in the season, and they were just never able to continue that momentum into that Sun Belt conference. And a guy, Ethan Vasco, who you and I both like a lot, good things, bad things, and maybe a not great defense all contribute, right, to the Coastal Carolina season kind of taking a detour to maybe what Coastal fans thought it could potentially be. So when I'm looking at this line right now, we're going to pick this at 12.5. I think that is a more than fair line, right? People might look at this and be like, oh my gosh, we're in Myrtle Beach, aka basically Coastal Carolina's
The
backyard,
home of the Chanticleers. Yeah.
the home of the Chanticleers. And you're telling me that Chanticleers are 12.5 point dogs? Yeah, yes, yes. Um, I don't know that strength of schedule. There's like a huge discrepancy there between these two conferences or teams or whatever. But I will say the team that's playing better football right now is UTSA, and the team that has less meaningful opt outs, and I'll let you touch on that a little bit more. For me, it's UTSA. I like this UTSA to win and cover 12.5.
I'm with you too. Absolutely. I listen. Obviously, a lot's been made at the quarterback position for Coastal Carolina right now. You've got Ethan Vasco in the portal. You've got also Noah Kim, your backup, who's nothing special, right? But he's also a serviceable, experienced backup. So now you're going to throw in Tad Hudson, right? Who's going to get the start for you. Tad Hudson, right? If you're a North Carolina local, you probably remember that name from high school. And he was a 4-star kid from Cornelius, North Carolina. Went to North Carolina University last year. Ended up transferring over after his freshman season, and now he's your backup. He's a big kid. He's got a live arm. Obviously, the talent is there to be made a 4-star. He was a basketball, he was a baseball kid as well. Solid athlete, not elite athlete, but solid athlete. Right. Obviously, I think you get a little bit more oomph in with the legs with a guy like Vasco, but he's a guy that'll be very interesting to see what they have going forward because they got some options in the portal, maybe with some guys um, there's still a pretty deep, I think, quarterback class in the portal that Coastal can go out and get somebody. See what you have in Tad Hudson, right? See what he can do in his first start. But I think some of your other opt outs are going to be pretty important, right? Pretty dooming, right? Matthew McDoom is their cornerback there. He's heading, I believe, to Cincinnati to the Big 12 there. He's a damn good player there in the defensive backfield. Cleve Lubin, right? Another edge rusher off the edge. Very, very good. Very twitched up. You had a lot of people in the portal really getting after him. You had Washington, the running back, right? A lot of guys kind of going out there. You're going to have to run the ball well, I think. And here's the problem. UTSA, say what you want about their defense. Statistically, they've been pretty good against the run. They're 16th nationally against the run. And if you got a guy, excuse me, a new quarterback you're breaking in, maybe not the crazy legs you had, more of the dynamic rusher with Vasco, it could be tough to find those stingy running lanes against this UTSA team, especially if Jamori Robinson is playing. Jamori Robinson, if you don't know, is UTSA's best player in the American Conference. He is a monster, 10 and a half sacks, 43 tackles. He's very, very good in that front seven for you. He did get banged up in the Army game at the end of November there. It's been a couple weeks. It sounds like he's going to play, but it'll be interesting to see how healthy he really is, though. If he's playing and looks good here, I do find a hard time for Coastal Carolina to move the football, even in basically a home game here for them.
Sorry, missed the mute button right there. But also too, like an interesting part of some of these bowl games is like you have two teams that are in this situation very, very penalized, right? And that's not going to get better when you have all these opt outs, right? And new players, new formations. Granted, you have more weeks of practice per se, but who's going to be the more disciplined team out here? I'd be willing to bet that it's probably UTSA in this situation with a little bit less turnover, even though they're like the third most penalized team in the entire country. Um, Keys for UTSA, I guess, getting off the field defensively, which they've done a really nice job of. I will say that that run defense stat, is a little bit uh, tilted, kind of in their favor, because there are some teams there's some teams in the American like Army that they did play that run the ball a substantial amount, but you're also playing teams like Tulsa, right, that really can't run the football. North Texas, a team that chooses not to really run the football. East Carolina really chooses not to run the football. So take it with a grain of salt right there. But you're right. Like UTSA is going to have to stop that run, like they have done a good job all season. Coastal Carolina is going to need to find a way to alleviate that quarterback that they've got back there. And yeah, I don't want to assume things because again, and maybe we're underestimating. Do you think we're underestimating the fact that this is, in Coastal Carolina's backyard?
Not necessarily, right? If you do have winter break, right, for these students, I wonder how many students are going to be there. Right? Maybe you don't have the typical home field advantage you do see for a normal conference game in the Sun Belt down there, in Conway, South Carolina. It'll be interesting. I tend to think it's something. It did lead me away from making this a best bet and putting this on our counter, right? In terms of picking up all those points for UTSA, I think maybe that did lead me away. But if you're telling me just like pick them right here, no consequences, just how I feel right now, yeah, I absolutely am leaning UTSA in this game, especially with what McCown can do in the air. And also a guy like Za Frazier, man, that cornerback for him, 6'3", 6 interceptions, difference maker back there for him, especially trying to break in a new quarterback for Coastal. Yeah. Plus, also Jeff Traylor did say, and we'll see how this works and continues to play out right throughout college football, and which how head coaches do use and deal with players in the portal. It sounds like he expects most of the team to be available for the bowl game, right? Even those who are in the portal, right, still practicing, still going to be able to play in that game. So you got a guy like Kavarian Barnes, right, the running back going to TCU, right? I don't know his exact thing, and he doesn't have to play in that game because you got High and maybe Henry if he's healthy, but maybe he could be playing too. So it's an added dimension, more things that keep the vibes high for UTSA, especially after they've been playing better football as of late.
Yeah. Also, I guess to go back, I guess to like that home field advantage kind of thing. About half of Coastal Carolina students are from in-state, which is a pretty large, not a very large number. I mean, again, it's not like a huge school, regardless, but um, just things to think about. And I'm not sure how many UTSA fans honestly live in Carolina, but uh, I would think that there's going to be some people that travel for this for UTSA. So we'll see. I'm seeing tickets. You can get them as low as $12. So I would imagine that this is going to be a pretty packed stadium. So I'm excited to watch this football game. I think you got not. I don't think this is necessarily an equal matchup, but I think having this game in Conway is a big deal. Maybe level some things that were not necessarily even heading into this game.
Do you
Let's head
think,
over to. Oh, sorry.
real quick, like these are two teams that if you follow college football and you're like kind of in tune with the G5, they've been some teams that have popped the last couple of years, right? Going back to COVID, right, with Coastal Carolina, UTSA the past couple of years, going in the CUSA last year in the American. I think they ended up in the American Championship or just close to it, right? They were right in there with Tulane, um, excuse me, and SMU. Not that this is a disappointing season for them. I think maybe it probably is for both these teams and these programs. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if there's a question in there. I just think it's another intriguing matchup. I think it adds a layer to it where it's like, yeah, I think these are two of the more those call bigger brands right into G5, and it's nice to see them matched up. And it sounds like both programs are going to be pretty excited about this game.
Let's head over to the famous Idaho Potato Bowl to catch Northern Illinois laying 3.5 to Fresno State. Both teams missing starting quarterbacks. Both teams missing several players uh, due to the portal. Both kind of schools experiencing conference realignment, potential conference realignment. Not that any of that actually plays a factor into the output that we're going to see on this field today, but I guess it's interesting to bring up the NIU football team. Ethan Hampton, the replacement for Rocky Lombardi this past season, he's been pretty solid, if you ask me. However, he will not be playing in this football game. The name of the quarterback for NIU playing in this football game is going to be, what's his name? Josh Holst? Is that who it is?
Yeah, Josh Holst here. He's, I think, a redshirt freshman, former walk-on kid. If you're an NIU fan, if you're a MAC fan, you remember him back when he started in both losses, right, against the Toledo football team and then a Ball State football team when Ethan Hampton was injured. But he did also, like, not just doom and gloom there. He did. I would consider him 1 and 2. He came off the bench, right, midway through the game when they were losing against Bowling Green when Ethan Hampton did originally get injured, and he came back and brought him back to win. This coaching staff is pretty high on him. They love his makeup. They love his demeanor. I think they're kind of going to see how he's going here, and they want him to be the guy going forward. I also think not just him. you have a lot of buy-in there. Obviously, yes, there's a lot of guys in the portal. Um, You've got Santana Banner, right, going Chief Power Five. You've got Skylar Gill Howard going Power Five. You've got Sanders going Power Five. Knighton going Power Five. A lot of defensive names there. Holy cow! On that, pretty stingy NIU defense. No matter though, I feel pretty good about this game here for NIU. 16 seniors right on that depth chart that they released there for NIU. I love that in bowl games. They also have guys who all those guys who are starting, in place of these guys in the portal that were starters, they've all started before. They do have a lot of experience. So you love that too. You've got, stud defensive tackle Devontae O'Malley playing in that game. He's been on a tear, six sacks in the last 8 games. Right. I know it's the MAC. I get that, but I think it's pretty damn impressive as well as the safety there. Um, Valcarcel, right? So that's also big for you. I think NIU is going to dominate this front seven, right? And that they have to. They have to on defense because you've got a Fresno team, right? You mentioned Mikey Keene. He's out of here. You're going to see, I think, a combo of Joshua Wood and Jaden Mandel. It sounds like Wood's probably going to get the start here. He's been playing a lot throughout the season because he's more of a change of pace guy, 6'2", 200 pounds, almost like a semi-wildcat guy for him. He's pretty athletic. He does have 5 touchdowns on the year in like short yardage positions there. He was one of the higher rated recruits they've gotten right from the quarterback position. So I think that's a big thing there. I think their fans are excited. He was a guy that was hurt, I believe, in spring practice. You saw Mandel get valuable reps in that spot, and he looked pretty good as well. So I think they feel pretty good about those guys. But the reality is, right, you've got no Jalen Moss at the wide receiver position, no Sharp as well. Like you're going to be introducing these newer, younger, less experienced quarterbacks without some of your safety blankets against a really talented and well coached defense in NIU that's very, very hungry, honestly. I don't know, man. It worries me. I think it's a recipe for disaster there, even though you've got NIU has to travel pretty far away. And Fresno is playing in a stadium in an environment that they're pretty familiar with, right? Playing in the Mountain West, playing against Boise State. Obviously, they'll be on the blue turf there. So that's how I'm feeling. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm liking NIU a lot right here for all the reasons that you just said. I'm just gonna try to not reiterate everything you just said, but you got new quarterbacks with unproven weapons over on one side with Fresno State, and kind of a similar thing with Northern Illinois. But you have this quarterback where you've seen glimpses, right? And quite frankly, I mean, is Trayvon Rudolph gonna play in this game? You said probably not, right?
No, he's not. I think he's gone.
But
He's in the
guess what?
portal.
Since 2 years ago, like this is not 2022 Trayvon Rudolph. He's still a good football player, right? Still a very good football player. I don't know how important he is to this team to where I'm like, okay, this is a humongous, gigantic downgrade. I really don't believe that. I also think that they're going to be able to run the football effectively against this Fresno State front seven. I, I think they're better coached, right? Now, if Jeff Tedford was still there, right, I might be saying different about that, right? But that's not the situation that we're having here. Thomas Hammock is an absolute dog when it comes to coaching NIU. NIU probably the most successful program in MAC history, right? If you go look back at the history of the MAC, not that has anything to do with this game, but I don't think 3.5 is enough, quite frankly. So I'm a lay 3.5 here. Not gonna put on the best bets, but I do like me some NIU here. Talking South Florida playing against San Jose State, and when you want to talk about like these G5 conferences, where do they stack up with each other? I think it is matchups like this that are very important to look at, right? Now, obviously, it's weird in bowl season because you have opt outs kind of all over the place. NFL draft opt outs, transfer portal opt outs. But I think the American and the Mountain West Conference this year were pretty comparable. If not, I think there's a chance that the Mountain West might have been a little bit better than the American this year, from top to bottom. And I know people want to look at Memphis and they want to look at what East Carolina did in their last like 6 games. They want to look at Army and Navy, being ranked in the top 25 at one point. Tulane, what they did some games. I don't know. I think this is interesting. I think San Jose State might be a little bit better than people think, and I think this is a matchup that favors San Jose State, particularly through the air, right? Walker, you get the quarterback for San Jose State, hasn't started the whole year, but once he inserted himself into that lineup, he was phenomenal. And he was throwing to a guy by the name of Nick Nash, who led the country um, in receptions and yards, I believe, for the entire season for all of college football. Hopefully, I have that right. They didn't play any conference championship games, so it's possible that those numbers changed for whatever reason. But so yeah, he won't have his best weapon. But guess what? Okay, Jordan Lockhart, a guy that we've talked about on
Justin.
this. Sorry, Justin Lockhart, a guy that we've talked about on this show, like actually probably at the beginning of the entire history of the Redshirt Sophomore. Um, like a year and a half ago, he was hurt all last year, right? It hasn't looked the same, I guess, this year. Thought it might be a little bit. This is his chance to shine. I think this is going to be his coming out party against a secondary for South Florida that is quite frankly garbage. Now, I do think an important thing for San Jose State here is getting to off to a hot start and finding a way to do something with Floyd Chalk on the ground, okay, in the second half because South Florida has been one of the best second half teams in the entire country.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll turn it over to South Florida here. Their quarterback, obviously, tough injury luck. Byron Brown, a guy we were high on, who didn't play great, honestly, in September, but he's been out since week 5 with a lower body injury. It's been the Bryce Archie show, right? And it's been up and down, as you know, as South Florida fans. 58% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Not a ratio you want to be at, and nothing special he adds to that development on the ground. Only 137 yards, as he added rushing. The good news is, right, you've got a San Jose State team who is not great, right? They're 91st in the country in pass yards allowed per game, over 230 yards per game. Yeesh. Plus, that San Jose State team is also potentially missing two of their starting cornerbacks, excuse me, who, are in the portal, right? One going to USC, right? So that obviously two of their more important players could be in for a tough one. You got a guy like Sean Atkins, wide receiver there, who's been playing better and better. You're seeing some of that chemistry develop with Archie, right? The last couple of games, you're seeing 6+ catches, 70+ yards, a couple of touchdowns, right? Good things are emerging for South Florida there offensively after it was pretty stagnant for a while. I also do want to talk about this is a game, I think, where you do have to consider potentially the location and the travel schedule of these teams. South Florida is coming from Tampa all the way over to Hawaii, while San Jose State just has to go from California to Hawaii. Obviously, that's a tough flight as well. A lot easier than going, a bunch of time zones away and trying to figure that all out. Um, we do talk about it here in these bowl games. You do have to consider what's going on, how's the mentality, how are you going to prepare, which team's going to show up and really try and be dedicated to win this football game when you're kind of going through it and breaking it down. Not that South Florida, they won't show up and won't be motivated to go. I do think that travel thing does factor in, right? I feel pretty good here about San Jose State laying 3.5 points. I'll take that. I'll take them to win, obviously, as well. What concerns me about like feeling really good about it, right, is a little bit of like your bailout guy, and Nick Nash is like whenever you need a point, right, like or excuse me, a first down or something like that, he can get it for you, right, as well as your cornerbacks missing as well. And I do want to mention real quick Lamar Radcliffe, freshman running back, I think, for San Jose State. That could be pretty interesting there. He's a guy that's been running a little bit more and more. USF is not great through the air, right? I think they're 128th out of 132 teams, which is not great at all. But on the ground, they're a little bit better. 84th, which is still not great. Still very, very vulnerable. So it'll be interesting there. The good news for South Florida is they've got a couple opt-outs, a couple guys in the portal. Nothing too major where they're dealing with like a guy like Nick Nash or DJ Harvey, the cornerback for San Jose State. So I do think you've got some interesting angles there for South Florida. There's a reason why this line is only a little bit more than a field goal. So obviously Vegas does think there's a very good chance South Florida's got a chance to win that game. I personally lean San Jose State.
Yeah, I'll lay 3.5. I also think maybe I'll have something for this game, on our best bet segment later on. San Jose State played in this bowl game last year. They've traveled to Hawaii before as a team. They're seniors on this team that know what this is like, and that was a little bit of a disappointing game for them last year. Okay, they ran into a Coastal Carolina team that was hot with a new quarterback named Ethan Vasco, who played really, really good football for them. Granted, San Jose State was also one of the hotter teams in the country heading into that bowl game. It was just a disappointing performance, and I don't think we're going to see that. If South Florida is able to run the football, obviously they're going to give themselves a chance to win this football game. I will say, if you look at some of the rushing offenses that San Jose State played against, right, when you're looking at the metrics and you're like, oh, well, this team gave up like 79, or they're 79th in the country in rushing yards allowed per game. When you look at that, you're like, well, they also played Boise State. They also played UNLV, which is a top 5 rushing offense. They played Air Force, which is a top 15 rushing offense. They played Colorado State, which was a top 40 rushing offense. They played Fresno State, which is a top 45 rushing offense. Like they played teams that are pretty good at running the football, and a Washington State team, and an Oregon State team that was top 35 running the ball. So like they kind of got shafted. Actually, I'm not sure if they played Boise State. Yeah, they did. So not only did they play both Washington State and Oregon State, they had to play UNLV, Fresno State, and Boise State. Talk about getting absolutely shafted when it comes to, and Colorado State. Talk about getting shafted when it comes to Mountain West schedules. You know, the only like kind of like, I'm not gonna say elite offense, but like the only dangerous offense rushing attack that you missed probably in that conference was New Mexico, right? So
On the ground, yeah.
on the ground, yeah.
Because Utah
So
State slings that thing.
yeah, so, and I know people want to look at it like, well, you only had 5 teams in the Mountain West with a winning record. All right, I would argue that there's some teams in that conference that are bowl caliber teams, right? So I don't know. I don't want people to hate on the Mountain West because I think it didn't get enough credit, right? Because you had 3 teams go 6-1 or 7-0, right? So that left some teams. Some teams had to go 2-5 in order for that to work out, right? Numbers wise. I just think the Mountain West might give the American a nice little smack in the mouth right after UNLV kind of gave California a smack in the mouth. Yeah, we'll see how these other teams fare, but I don't know, man. I know we both believe that NIU is gonna beat Fresno State, but I think that San Jose State, with the weapons that they have, even without Nick Nash, that they can get this done. Let's go to the game above Sports Bowl in Detroit, Michigan.
What happened in the Quick Lane Bowl, right? What happened?
What
Where's
happened?
the Ford logo? Where no.
Where's Bowling Green? Right?
Yeah.
No. MAC territory. Right, you got Pitt squaring off versus Toledo. Pitt is 7-point favorites. We're gonna pick this at 6.5. Hope that's all right. This Toledo team was a little disappointing this year. It really was. But as we've seen from some MAC teams early in this bowl season, that maybe it was just a really good year in the MAC, right? I mean, early in the season, you had Northern Illinois, right, beat Notre Dame. You had Bowling Green competing with some pretty elite teams, aka, Texas A&M, Penn State, giving those folk a run for their money. You had an Ohio team, win their bowl game. Now Western Michigan, I thought put on a better performance against South Alabama than I thought that they were.
Yep.
So I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe it's a good MAC conference this year. But on the other side of things, I don't know. I don't know what the quarterback situation is for Pitt in terms of the injuries. Maybe you can shed some light on that for us. But I found this game pretty difficult to pick. I think I got a spot where I'm leaning, but I don't know. I had a tough time picking this game.
This is another one. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously Nate Yarnell is in the portal. He's heading back home to Texas State. He's from Lake Travis down there in Austin. So it leaves you with Eli Holstein, who's a little bit banged up, right? He started out super hot. Obviously, I think cooled down, got injured, came back. He still finished the year 17-7 touchdown to interception ratio, which you'll absolutely take. I think, especially with our preseason expectation of Eli Holstein, he's the guy that
Yeah,
exceeded those for sure. If it's not going to be Eli Holstein with Yarnell in the portal, the backup, they're likely to turn to a guy, redshirt freshman David Lynch, right? I don't know a ton about him. I'm going to just assume that Holstein's going to be available. It sounded like they were optimistic he was going to play. Narduzzi said it wasn't as bad as the original injury that he had a couple weeks earlier against Virginia, where he only missed 2 weeks. This has been what, 3-ish weeks, 3.5 weeks since they would have played. So hopefully he's had plenty of time to heal, rest up, and get back to it. Desmond Reed, as the guy that missed the last game of the year for Pittsburgh, he's going to be ready to go, which is huge because he's their leading rusher. He is very, very good, especially with no Kenyatta Mumfield, right, wide receiver for Pittsburgh, who's opting out, going to the NFL. Good luck to him. You're going to need Reed, especially with a potentially banged up Holstein, or even if it is Lynch in there at quarterback, you're going to need Reed to ball out. And I think he can. I know Toledo is, about average against the run metrically nationwide, right? It's about 50th. I think, and something that we talked about, or you brought up, off there, was their ESPN FPI, which take that for what you will, their strength of schedule is not a great one, right? In terms of it's 131st out of what, 132 teams?
134.
134 teams. I said that wrong earlier, but still not great, right? So I do think there's going to be spots to be had against them, especially with Reed, the way he's been playing, even without Mumfield, even without Dejan Reynolds. I still think you've got a guy in Holstein, if he's healthy, that he can get after Toledo here. I think on the defensive side of the ball, Kyle Lewis obviously gets a lot of attention. He's a very, very good football player. He's a big reason why Pittsburgh is a top 25 team against the run, right? And it worries me too here is that Toledo, their offensive line, can they block Pittsburgh, right? They've been good most of the year, right? They only
In
allow
pass protection.
in pass protections. Thank you. They only allow about 1.5 sacks per game, which is pretty damn good, right? But Pittsburgh is fifth in the nation with 40 sacks. I think they're a little bit higher with sacks per game because you've got some teams in the bowl games. They're playing the 13th game, so they average three.
Third heading into the bowl season.
Yes,
That's third in the country.
3.3 sacks per game is pretty damn good for me, right? So I think those are all reasons why Pittsburgh gets a win here, even going to Detroit, even going to MAC country where Toledo and Jason Candle pretty familiar with. But I think they've got enough talent and physicality to get after them defensively and offensively and really control the line of scrimmage there with their guys.
Yeah, Toledo really didn't run the ball all that well this year, like the way that they normally do. And I know there are good run defenses in the MAC, right? And Toledo, I think, played all of them. They played Ohio, Miami, Ohio, Bowling Green. Like they played some solid run defenses in this spot, like you said.
Ohio as
Pitt,
well.
yeah, Pitt, solid run defense. And are they going to kill them through the air? Right? Are they going to kill Pitt through the air? The thing that I thought that Syracuse was going to do, and Kyle McCord so tragically goofed up, to where like could have been talking about Syracuse as a team in the college football playoffs. That would have been pretty funny. But anyways, that I'm with you. I don't really see a situation where Toledo wins this football game. And you might go back and look at like that Mississippi State game earlier in the season where, yeah, they did kind of dominate the line of scrimmage. They did generate explosive plays, but where did that Toledo team go? Right? I don't know. I don't know. I believe Toledo's team total for this game is like 21 and a half, 20 and a half. I thought about taking the under in this spot because I'm not sure where they're going to find their points against this Pitt defense if they're not able to throw the ball. And at times, I know that they did. It just was not consistent enough, right? So, and like you said, yeah, blocking, I guess, this defensive line for Pitt is it's going to be a little bit concerning. So we'll see what kind of stuff happens there. And I think this can be a good game, though. I mean, the line's under a touchdown. But yeah, if David Lynch does play, though, over Holstein,
Could get
right?
really interesting.
Because, like, whatever injury. Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable laying 6.5 with Pitt, honestly. I wouldn't. That might be a situation where I would not bet it, but I would flip my pick on the show, right? I would take Toledo plus 6.5, but I'm with you. I'll take Pitt minus 6.5.
Yeah, I think for Toledo to win, unfortunately, like in the Mississippi State game, right? You go back, they dominated time of possession, they won the turnover battle, they ran the ball well, they took care of the football, they hit explosive plays, right? You mentioned that that's kind of been missing when they got into MAC play, which was super disappointing to
Which is
finish out the
wild.
season.
Normally it's the inverse, you know?
Exactly, and um, that lack of run game against stingy defense that really concerns me. I think if Tucker Gleason, right, Newton, Vander Ross, guys like that for Toledo, if they start taking advantage of that pass defense, you put a negative game script in for a backup quarterback or even Holstein, right, without some of his better receivers, that can get really interesting. I do think where if you've got a spot where the over is clearly hitting for this game and it's a close game, I don't hate the fact that Toledo can win this in a shootout. I do consider this game. I feel like it's going to be pretty low scoring, at least for Toledo, and I just feel a little bit more comfortable, yeah, in Pitt right now, especially with Holstein, which I'm assuming he's going to play. Um, yeah,
It's total sitting at 51.5 if you like the under. I personally wouldn't. I'd be a little bit nervous taking that, but
no, the sacks, all the sacks that could happen there
yeah,
with strip sacks and turnovers,
turnovers. I mean,
explosive plays
from
in
both
for
quarterbacks,
Toledo for both.
turnovers from both quarterbacks. I know Holstein did a good job taking care of the football earlier in the year, but
Yeah, I can't do it.
no way.
Now, here's the thing. What if I told you, does Lynch playing factor in? Like, do you feel better about the under, or is like, well, maybe
I don't know because
I,
like
I think
I
you
don't
just
know
run
how
the
well he's going
ball.
to take care of the football. Or does that mean that Pittsburgh like is in the game plan? They're like, okay, yeah, we have to establish the run, so we're going to run the ball with Desmond Reed. Which it's wild how well they did that early in the season. This is kind of the tale of like two teams that kind of tapered off as the season went on. You had Pittsburgh just Desmond Reed Heisman conversations early, weeks 1 through 3. Eli Holstein Heisman conversations, weeks 1 through 6, and then yeah, it just
Are you worried about Pitt potentially not showing up?
yes.
Right.
So why not? It's not going on a best bet. No way. No way. I
So they played the Quicken Lane Bowl, right, back in Ford Field, back in 2019. They played against Eastern Michigan and they won 34-30, and that was a 6-6 Eastern Michigan team, right?
yeah. Although so Chris Creighton coached the Eastern Michigan team.
I know, so
I'm
freaking
trying to think who
unfair.
he was even on that team.
I'm looking right now, and
I mean, Sampson probably was because that dude's been. Although no, he was
no,
probably in
no,
Iowa back then.
yeah. That was back in
So, anyways, yeah, that's crazy. Head
fair
over to
enough.
the Rate Bowl. Brilliant name for a bowl, I guess. Uh, Rutgers is playing against Kansas State, and I might be, I could be so wrong about this, but I think you have two teams trending in opposite directions. I think Rutgers had a bit of an upsy downsy season. Okay, you were up, and then you were down, and then you're up. I think Ethan Kaliakmanis hasn't played that bad of football the last couple of games. I think Avery Johnson still is a little bit Avery Johnson-y at times, right? I don't know what you're gonna have here for Kansas State on the offensive side of the football. What are we gonna get from them? What are they gonna produce? And is Rutgers gonna take care of the football and play good defense? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe.
Rutgers is going to miss their defensive coordinator, right? Joe
Coach
Harizmiak.
H.
Coach
Coach
H.
H.
Thank you.
Razmiak, I think. That's how you
Harizmiak.
say it.
Over
I
down
think.
to UMass,
God.
right? Very well respected defensive coordinator, right? He's done some good things there for Rutgers and Shiano. Um, their numbers don't quite show it, right? They are 94th in pass defense, 67th in rush defense, but I think they've been a lot more competitive than you would have thought, especially with some of the guys they did lose. Here's the thing, though. Ethan is not good. Ethan Kalikmanis, Rutgers quarterback, is not good when he's under pressure. Right, as a Minnesota fan, I know that more than anybody. Right, I know he played well against Minnesota in the first half. When you get to him, we get pressure in his face. Bad things happen for Rutgers, whether it's a sack, missed throw, bad read, whatever it may be. Kansas State's a top quarter team in sacks. Right, they're 33rd in the nation. I think that could be pretty interesting. Also, can we see Avery Johnson some bowl game magic again? Right, we saw what he did last year. He dueled against Jackson Arnold. Right, can he expose his Rutgers' potential pass defense? Right, and obviously you're not going to have Keegan Johnson who's in the portal, but I believe Jace Brown is back on the
I
team.
believe Kansas State. I thought they played NC State.
Who did Oklahoma play last? Oh, Oklahoma played Arizona.
Arizona.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry. That's my mistake there. Regardless, so Avery
It's
Johnson looked
Brennan
good
Armstrong legacy game. Yikes.
after the whole MJ Morris thing. Yeah, listen, I just think you're going to see Avery Johnson play better football. I think the time off will be really nice for him to be able to kind of reset, figure out what went right, figure out what went wrong, and kind of battle through that. I think Jace Brown is a pretty damn good wide receiver for Kansas State. I know he talked about going to the portal, but never officially entered. Had a really good game in the Farmageddon game against Iowa State. Obviously, you've got DJ Giddens and Dylan Edwards, who I believe are playing. Could not find anything to tell me otherwise, which would be awesome, right, to get that going. Sounds like Kyle Monangai for Rutgers. I'm kind of bouncing around here. I'm so sorry. Sounds like he's not going to play. But damn it, man. Antoine Randall, excuse me, different player. Antoine Raymond, really freaking good. Young kid there for Rutgers. He played in that Minnesota game when Monangai had to miss, and he ran the ball really hard, very physical, kind of has some juice as well to him. I really like the way he ran the football. So I'm not too concerned, although I do not want to underestimate the importance of Monangai to that offense because we know Kirk Soraka loves to run the football. That RPO stuff sets up the pass as well, right? And really get Ethan settled in. So that's kind of where I'm seeing here. I like Kansas State in this game. I feel pretty darn good about it, and I know you're on the other side there, but I'll let you. Now you go.
Well, I know Kirk
What am I missing
Sharaka
here?
likes to run the football, right? But Ethan's thrown the ball over 30 times in 7 of his last 8 games.
What's the record? What's their record in those games?
That's a good question. It's probably like 2-5,
2-5, 3-5,
something like
maybe.
that.
Well, let's see.
A little bit tougher
3-5
schedule.
probably.
A little bit tougher schedule down the stretch. But Ethan, in his last
5.
6 games, 1,500 total yards, 11 total touchdowns, to 1 interception. I don't know that I believe in that Kansas State offense entirely. I think Rutgers can do a good job of controlling the football. And again, I know we talk about sometimes the bottom of the Big Ten, is it's the bottom of the Big Ten, right? There's a lot of bottom feeders there, right? And they had a lot of those on their schedule, and they were only able to win so many games, right?
7 games. Hitting the over, by the way. Thank you very much.
Yes, exactly. But Kansas State, in games that got sloppy, that they let, these other teams play in the mud a little bit. Houston, okay, Kansas was a tight game. Arizona State gave them the business, right? I do think. How about Tulane? Played in the mud a little bit early in the season, gave them a bit of a scare. I just think that a physical team like Rutgers, can compete on the same field as Kansas State. I think that this was a sneaky good matchup, and I think that there's a sneaky chance that Rutgers does some damage here. I'm going to pick them to win, and I'm also going to pick them to cover this football game. Haven't been a real believer in Kansas State, and maybe this is just like me projecting my preseason predictions on Kansas State and being like, I don't see it with this roster. I need to see more from Avery Johnson. Maybe that's just that. Maybe it's spillover from that. But I kind of like the way that Rutgers has been playing football recently, particularly that offense. I know it hasn't been against popular, tough traditionally good Big Ten teams, right? But I mean, a 41 burger on Michigan State, a 31 burger on Illinois, a 31 burger on Maryland, a 26 burger on Minnesota, a 32 burger on UCLA. Are those great defenses? No. But I just named a couple of their games in the last 7 games. And in that stretch when they weren't winning football games, right? Talking about like Wisconsin and Nebraska, those are a little bit defenses, better defenses. And I would say that Kansas State's defense is a little bit more comparable. It's closer to those defenses than Maryland, I would say, but I still think that Ethan Kaliakmanis is playing better football down the stretch. I think, like you said, though, Coach H losing him, I think is a big deal because he has been so good. Uh, I I don't know. I'm just feeling Rutgers here. +7 would be what you can get it at, but we'll pick this at 6.5. So I'll take Rutgers +6.5 and Rutgers to win as well.
Last thing here for me, things that we've talked about, reasons why Kansas State loses games or keys to games to get them in a good spot. Obviously, run the football well, fast starts, but take care of the football. When they take care of the football, they're a good football team. They're hard to beat. They're winning a lot of games. When they are not, they're losing the turnover margin. A lot of bad things happen. The good news here is like something's going to fall here because Rutgers is 105th nationally with only 7 interceptions on the season. Right, not a lot, very opportunistic defense. Forced fumbles, they're about 53rd with 9. So it's not like a
Yeah,
ton
they've
of
only
stuff is
forced
going on.
12 turnovers on the season.
Yeah, so it's not like you're seeing this crazy opportunistic aggressive defense that's going to cause a lot of things for Kansas State. Now, a lot of times you have self-inflicted wounds for Avery Johnson and Kansas State, and that you just can't avoid, and just make you scratch your head, right? As a Wildcat fan for him, but I said it against Farmageddon. I'm going to say it again. I think he takes care of the football. I think we see them play a complete football game, a clean football game, and they win by over a touchdown or more.
I think Rutgers also needs to play a clean football game, which they have all year in terms of like penalties, right? And taking care of the football. They've only had 8 turnovers all year.
The,
They've only had 8 turnovers.
the fact that they've got a pretty good turnover margin without having a ton of creative turnovers is pretty interesting. Here's the thing, though. Like, Ethan consistently, like 54% completion percentage, right? Like, I just seen him. Maybe
It's
I'm just
closer to
starved.
60 in his last 6 games.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm just
Listen,
saying.
I was high on Rutgers this year, more so because I thought they play a style of football that was conducive to win 7+ games in what essentially was right a Big Ten West schedule. But maybe I'm fault of it too. But I think this Kansas State team hopefully plays a little bit pissed off. Right. Last thing here too, this game was played the day after Christmas. Right. Are we worried about either of these programs showing up?
I mean, I don't know how I would measure that, you know? Like,
I guess it was more just throwing out there like,
yeah,
oh, it's
I
the day after
mean,
Christmas. Like, I don't, you know what I mean?
like, for I guess an under, yeah, I guess that could play into that narrative a little bit. And I did look at that total, and because I'm looking at these two teams, like, these are two teams that are probably going to try to run the ball on each other. And Rutgers needs to dominate the football. And there have been games that Rutgers has dominated having the football in games that they score like 17 points, or 7 points, So I totals at 50.5, by the way. If you do think that it's a little bit high, which that's not crazy. If you do think that's a little bit high, I'm not going to think you're crazy. However, I'm just a little bit turned off from that because of how well Rutgers has been playing on offense, albeit against some subpar Big Ten defenses. But let's see if it translates against Kansas State right here. So, who has been pretty good against the run this year, but I think you're right where Ethan Kaliakmanis needs to play well to win this football game. I think he does it. I think he does it.
Miller is the best wide receiver in this game. Damir Miller is the best wide receiver in this game, I think. Right over Chase
Unless
Brown.
it, probably. So, hey, we'll see. I'm excited. I'm excited. But it's not often that we fade each other, so here we go. So the 68 Ventures Bowl. You got Arkansas State playing against Bowling Green, an Arkansas State team that, boy, was I high on them this year. You returned a lot on defense. Sure, you lost your best piece in the secondary on the defensive side of the football, and I guess your best, because Kieran Crawford went to Auburn as well, so you did lose a nice piece there on the edge. Offensively, sure, you lost uh, Foreman, right? Who cares? You got Corey Rucker, right? And early in the season, he was balling, but just, I don't know. It did not come together the way that I thought it would, especially on the defensive side of the football. Good Lord, was it bad. And Bowling Green has some dogs on their team that are ready to bark because they've got weapons, they got explosive plays, they got an experienced veteran quarterback stepping up to the plate here. Yeah, the line here is 7, and I think what are we picking this at? We're picking it at 7.5. All right, so if you think Arkansas State's going to win this game, and you can get it at 8s too, if you're into that, if you like Arkansas State in the spot, you need a Jalen Rayner masterclass, and you need to somehow stop Harold Fannin. Which, by the way, I will say, for some reason, and I think Bowling Green has other pieces other than Harold Fannin, but for some reason, when you do stop Harold Fannin, there have been instances where Bowling Green's offense has gone stagnant. The question is, can you do that as Arkansas State? I really want to take Arkansas State in this game, but I can't get myself to do it. I'm on Bowling Green here to win and cover.
Yeah, I'm with you here too. I do think it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, Bowling Green going down to Mobile, Alabama, Arkansas State, heading over to Alabama, not too far for them. But yeah, I'm with you here. Arkansas State's defense, I just don't trust them. Right, they're 131st out of 134 teams in rush defense. They're 95th in pass defense, 112th in sacks. Right, a lot of things that you want to be able to do to stop this offense. And Bowling Green, it's not, you haven't done it all year, right? And you're, this is, I think you're seeing some of the better talent you have seen all year long. um I think Stewart's gonna play, right? I think he's committed right to Virginia Tech. I think that was big news for them. The running back there, but him and Patterson, I think, got to keep going, right? I think you control time possession. I think playing with a lead is super important because of how good, honestly, Arkansas State has been running the football, right? I do think this is a team where negative game script or game script is going to play a big part here in letting teams do what they want to do, controlling tempo, controlling time of possession, pace, all that good stuff. Wide receiver Malcolm Johnson for Bowling Green. You mentioned if Fannin can't get going, right? Malcolm Johnson had a nice game against Miami, Ohio, right? In that last week there in the MAC. If he can have another nice game, that would do wonders, I think, for this offense. And Bazelak, also Harold Fannin, too, 11 yards away from the tight end, all-time tight end single season receiving record, right? I believe that's what it is, 11 yards, right? Now, we'll see how productive he is and how many snaps he's getting after those 11 yards. But if I'm him, right, I get a chance to play in a national stage, right? Prime time, 8 p.m. Central Time there, local time on ESPN, day after Christmas, right? Not a lot going on. You got a chance there to put on a show against a team that has been susceptible to the pass. We talked about them, 95th in pass defense there. Moving on to Arkansas State here, Jalen Raynor, yes, a lot is put on him too, but he has struggled at times taking care of the football, taking sacks. He's got over 2 sacks a game at 27. It's not ideal, especially a Bowling Green team that's been opportunistic there, right? And they're 41st in sacks. They're 21st in pass defense, right? I I don't know. I don't see a ton of optimism here for Arkansas State. I think there's a reason why that line is at a touchdown. I feel pretty good about it. Give me Bowling Green.
Yeah, whenever there was like someone that you needed to stop, right, on a team, when Arkansas State, there's a guy that you watch on film, and you're like, okay, that's the guy I need to stop, right? Uh, They couldn't do it. Devontae Ross, over 100 yards. Traylon Washington, over 100 yards. Amon Hardy, Louisiana Monroe, over 200 yards rushing.
Come
Right?
on.
Traylon Washington, Pat Conroy, 2 touchdowns. I mean, this was just not a good football team, guys, this year. It really wasn't. I think they benefited a little bit from, uh, granted, they had a tough out of conference slate. Do you want to count Central Arkansas in there? Giving them a little bit of heartburn there late in the game. Corey Rucker heroics in that game, by the way. If you missed that game, it was awesome. Um, but just yeah, I can't do it. Jamal Pritchett, 137 yards, 2 touchdowns. How are they going to stop Harold Fannin when they have not stopped a single team's best player from going nuclear on them? They're not going to do it. I want to put this on my best bets, and I probably will privately put this as a bet of mine, day of the game. Just because I think 7.5 points is a lot, right? For a bowling team, green team that's been a little bit inconsistent. But I the 68 Ventures Bowl was a blowout last year, right? Um, but it was a
It
Sun
was
Belt
Sun
team,
Belt over the MAC, yeah.
right?
South Alabama destroying Eastern Michigan.
I think this could be a similar game. Could be wrong. Again, you never know when you're going to get a Jalen Raynor masterclass, right? Talking about a team that was actually technically in it to win the Sun Belt in like the last 2 weeks of the season. So I don't know. Maybe I'm giving Arkansas State too hard of a time. I mean, they went 7-5, 5-3 in the Sun Belt, but man, you missed Marshall, you missed James Madison, you missed Georgia Southern from the other division. I mean, your crossovers were Old Dominion when they were playing bad, and you lost to them, uh, and Georgia State. So I just, I don't know. And then a Sunbelt West that maybe was not as strong as has been in past years when Troy's normally pretty good. So I don't know. Sorry, Arkansas State. Maybe you got a little bit more hate from us than you probably deserve, but needless to say, CD and I are both heavily on Bowling Green here in this spot.
Well, here's what I'll say too. I think you look at a script and you go back to that Arkansas State game. Excuse me, Arkansas State South Alabama game, where South Alabama put up a ton of yards, right, but not a ton of points. And I think a similar spot here, where if you're winning on third down, like timely stops for you is going to be huge in this game, right? Winning in red zone, third down, fourth down, different things that you can do. Maybe throw some wrinkles there in bowl prep to get off the field on those certain plays. Pick and choose your spots. You're not going to be dominant in this game. Neither defense will. I'll say that. Neither defense will. It's going to be about being opportunistic, choosing your spots, getting off the field in clutch spots there, as well as momentum and kind of all how the game script is going here will be huge. But yeah, it's tough for Arkansas State. Although we're big Arkansas State fans on this show. I think
Yeah.
we like Butch Jones there and what he can do with the talent and honestly resource they have there. Also, this is my every time we talk about Arkansas State, I have to throw him in there. Timmy McClain is a freaking stud, right? I think he's the best backup quarterback in the Sun Belt this year. Obviously, Raynor's a stud. We love him, what he did there. Glad he said Arkansas State. But McClain will be a nice piece for somebody, I think, in the portal. But had to say that.
Navy taking on Oklahoma, in which this line, and this is a correct line, this is pulled directly from the source, Vegas. Oklahoma's favored by only 3 points. And I can't wrap my head around it.
I mean, I scoured. We scoured the internet. Like, who's not playing? What are we missing here? Why is this line at 3? And this is all due respect to Navy. Obviously, what they did to Army was freaking awesome, right, on national television. That was fantastic. I know you got some good tidbits about them, but I just don't see it here, right? Even if you don't know who's playing, right, how many defensive guys, those leaders, are going to be playing. It sounds like you've got some opt outs, right? Not Ethan Downs. It sounds like you've got Danny Stutzman and Billy Bauman that were opting out. It sounds like Ethan Downs, the original plan was maybe not to be, you know, a guy who's playing the bowl game, but it sounds like maybe he is going to. You're hearing some stuff out of there, which would be awesome for you, especially against a pretty darn good, Navy offense and what they can do being explosive. I think Michael Hawkins is a guy, even with Jackson Arnold in the portal, he's looking good in bowl prep. I think it's been a really nice opportunity to kind of reset, get some guys healthy, right? Deion Burks, is he playing? Right? Zion Kearney, is he playing?
But you haven't played with receivers healthy all year. Like, why does that change now, right?
And also, too, you've also been playing with one hand behind your back because your coaching staff offensively, right, were misses. And now you got Ben Arbuckle in there who's not going to be calling plays, right? It's going to be um, the same guy calling plays. I forget what his name is, but he's still calling plays there that it was at the end of the season. But he's in there coaching quarterback. So I think it's a really nice opportunity to see what he did with John Mateer, Ward, all of the very good quarterbacks there, Ben
Cam
Arbuckle,
Ward.
Cam Ward, and getting Michael Hawkins ready to go because he did not have a chance to compete. Last time we saw him out there,
See, also with Bailey Zappi.
that would have been Bailey Zappi at Western Kentucky. Yeah, awesome. Different kinds of quarterbacks, obviously, all of them
Different.
very
Yeah.
different. But Hawkins, I think he can get the best out of him.
So,
And
like, yeah, I guess Navy to win this game has to score points, right? Because, like, Navy's defense, can we agree that it's not good, right? Like, it's not good.
no,
Okay.
it's not.
You might be looking like, okay, well, they're top 50 in their pass defense. They're top 80 in their run defense. Yeah, that's not great, but they played Army. What they played Notre Dame. Guys, like any like standard counting statistic, right? That you're gonna look at for Navy or Army or Air Force for that matter, you have to take it with a grain of salt because these games are limited by the number of plays that are actually run in the football game. Okay, watching this defense, there are holes. They have been out physical before. Um, the luxury that they've had is some of these gimmicks that they've had in their offense, being able to take advantage of that. And we saw that, happen against Memphis, who turns out they didn't have a great defense either, right? Maybe Florida State was just really that bad, right? They were able to do that against Army. Okay, well, maybe looking at Army's schedule again and reevaluating the teams that they played, maybe they didn't play in a lot of high caliber offenses, right? I don't know. I do think Billy Bowman and Danny Stutzman being out are huge, right? For the total, team chemistry of that defense, the ability, the upside of it, right? But there's just too many. They were just in no world should Oklahoma be under a touchdown favorite against Navy. Just in no world. I get it. Navy's scrappy. They're in a bowl game. All right, it's the Armed Forces bowl game. Okay, but also this game's in Fort Worth. It's not that far from Oklahoma, right? You got a bunch of kids probably going home, visiting family, right? This game's on Friday the 27th. Kids that are probably going to get to spend Christmas with their families in Fort Worth or Dallas or whatever, and then still make it to the game. And I don't know. If Navy does get to the red zone, they have to capitalize. I know that they've been one of the best teams in the country in the red zone. They're second in the country in red zone touchdown percentage behind Indiana before that Ohio State game. They're also, interesting enough, the only team in the FBS to never play in a one-score game at all this year. Which is a little bit interesting because if this thing does get close, I mean, we haven't been able to entirely trust the Oklahoma coaching staff, but
At least they've been
feels
there.
like, it feels like you got maybe a little bit more battle tested. Now, maybe that was wrong, but you can't call it the Navy been shit not battle tested. That's pretty terrible. But at least maybe they haven't seen games like that. Their coaching staff hasn't managed games like one score game. I don't know. It's a
Something to
thought.
consider for
It's a
sure.
nugget, right? In these bowl games, we're trying to find all these angles. I just think the angles to Oklahoma -3, and I don't think I have to think much about it, right? You saw now Notre Dame's defense is pretty special, right? But you saw what they did to that Navy offense. They made it look like absolute garbage. Alec Texa, pretty solid player. Uh, Eli Heidenreich, decent player when he has explosive plays in the receiving game. I get it. Horvath is a decent quarterback, for Navy standards. As long as Oklahoma doesn't give up explosive plays in the pass game, I think, because I really don't see them marching down the field, down Oklahoma's throat, as Oklahoma's been a pretty good defense. I think this would just be really embarrassing if Oklahoma lost here. I really do. Even with this point spread. And Vegas knows things better than we do sometimes. But in bowl games, we like to think that there are sometimes some outliers that we could sniff out. And I think this is one.
Absolutely. And also, not only is the coaching staff kind of a little desperate here, too. This is an Oklahoma team that's, yes, losing a lot in the portal, but they're bringing in a lot, too, right? So you've got a lot of guys who are maybe didn't play a ton in the regular season at the wide receiver position. There are other spots there where linebacker, safety, but they're still very talented, right? And they're also hungry for an opportunity to play and showcase their talents for their coaching staff before they get those other guys on campus. Yeah, it's something really interesting to monitor there as well. Like, oh, I remember that guy from recruiting. Oh, I remember that name as well. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Where's he been for Oklahoma? Look at him. Look at him move. So, yeah, I think got a lot of talent there still. And, yeah, this is a spot here. I'm not worried about letdown at all for Oklahoma. These players, these coaches, they'll be ready to play.
Going to Birmingham Bowl. We get a good matchup here in the Birmingham Bowl. Georgia Tech versus Vanderbilt. I think this game is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Think about everything that you got here. I mean, you got two quarterbacks that play very similarly. You got two coaches that have far exceeded expectations for this season. Playing in Birmingham, so regionally you're pretty close, but you're splitting the difference basically a little bit between these. Maybe I don't know, but
A couple
you got
highways.
teams that are metrically not similar, but kind of similar. I scrappy underdogs with good coaching staffs right now.
Yeah, listen, I think this is awesome. I think this is the most intriguing matchup of this entire week. The best quarterback bowl matchup we have of this season. I think a healthy Haynes King, which you saw against Georgia, which you'll probably see here today in Birmingham, against a Diego Pavia, who's coming back for another season for Vanderbilt, who's also super dangerous, right? I think it is awesome. I was trying to figure out some spots here. Obviously, Georgia Tech has some guys in the portal that they're going to miss, right? Obviously, the headliner is Eric Singleton, right? But you've got a line offensive tackle, right? Corey Robinson, although I know they like the young kid and Ethan McKinney. Tay Seymour is headed over to Auburn. I believe you also have your backup wide receiver as well in the portal. Not McCollum. Rutherford, I think he's also in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to find that as well. But I still think you got some guys there. You got seniors, Chase Lane, Avery Boyd, guys that can come up in big spots here. You also have Jamal Haynes, Alexander, as well as Haynes King on the ground that can get after it. Vanderbilt's a defense that, yes, they've been pretty good against the run, and they've been overall improved, obviously, there. But against the pass, it has not been great. 101st against the pass there. And I think that's where you're seeing the Haynes King showing that right arm off, seeing guys like Lane and Boyd in big spots in their last potential bowl matchups. You also got some young wide receivers there. How about Isaiah Canyon, right? Bailey Stockton as well. How about the true freshman, or the freshman Luke Harpring, right at the tight end spot? A lot of interesting spots you could see there for this Georgia Tech offense. I'm going to slightly lean Georgia Tech. I don't know either way for sure. I think this is a really intriguing matchup. There's so many ways, so many angles you could kind of break it down from in terms of what's going to happen there. It worries me. It's not a best bet because of some of those opt-outs you're going to have, some of the transfer portal spots you do have that could be difference maker. Romello Height at the edge for Georgia Tech as well. Could be another guy you're also going to be missing on the defensive side of the ball that could help in trying to contain Pavia when he's kind of breaking down and running. But that's where I'm at right now. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you, and it feels obvious, right? Like to just take Georgia Tech, right? Because you have that sort of recency bias in that game that they had against Georgia. That was an absolute barn burner, right?
In Miami, right in November. That was November as
Yep,
well.
Miami. It, they're not talented enough to just walk up and win this football game, though. They're not. And let's be real, missing those receivers is a big deal. Now, if they run the football like they know that they can, right? They got plenty of people to do that, right? Yeah, they can win this game and probably control the football game. They also got to be careful about the explosive plays that Vandy's going to have dialed up, right? Like, I, there is a lot of inexperience in that Georgia Tech secondary. You're going to have a situation where Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt are going to be unloading their bag and everything that they had left in this season in the playbook. So I think that's like you're looking at the Jimmys and Joes and X's and O's. I also think because of the spot that we're in right now, I think there's a chance that there are a lot of explosive plays that could be generated from both teams. And in a shootout, right, I don't think Georgia Tech wants to be a part of a shootout. I really don't think they want to do that. So I'll take Georgia Tech and I'll lay the 2.5. But I just wanted to play some devil's advocate there. And also, I mean, are we're seeing what, like basically two players not playing for Vanderbilt in this game,
That's pretty telling.
albeit some important ones. I don't know. Is Eli Stowers going to play? Do we know that for sure?
I haven't heard for sure either way. I'm assuming he's going to play. I think the Ricky Wright's
I
the
definitely know
interesting
he's going to
one.
the draft. I don't know what role he'll have in this bowl game, but I do think that would be a pretty substantial loss if you did lose him.
Well,
But
especially with that inexperience, the injuries there with the Georgia Tech secondary, you saw Georgia actually be able to move the football in that second half with some of those injuries. And now you're seeing um, some of the portal. You've got young guys there. I'm hoping Zachary Tobe will be back. I think he's got an interesting future there at the cornerback position. Um, but again, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, that would be a huge one because you've got
yeah,
Sherelle, you've got Skinner as well, but he adds a different dimension over the middle of the field for Pavia. Big target, reliable guy, chemistry there from New Mexico State and that coaching staff as well. I'm glad you brought up that coaching staff and what they can do. This coaching matchup is also super intriguing, right? I think more at the coordinator level than anything, right? Buster
hmm
Faulkner,
and I'll take Georgia Tech's coordinators, by the way, over Vanderbilt's.
good, good. Now it's Tim Beck slash Jerry Kill and um our guy Clark Lee actually calling the defense there, but going
Which is
against
a
Buster Faulkner.
which is a big change though, because Clark Lee was not calling plays last year.
Here's the interesting thing here too. Clark Lee has a ton on his plate, right? At least during the season, like you can kind of just throttle down and like we're gonna play football, right? And we're gonna come up with a game plan. Yeah, you got some other stuff you got to do here, but these last 2 weeks, I'm sure, have been crazy hectic for Clark Lee recruiting, transfer portal, retention, fundraising, all these other things that are going on, as well as trying to game plan and prep for a very, very good and well thought out schemed offense. That's another spot here, too, where it's like, yeah, maybe Vanderbilt is bought in for sure, but the way that their staff is structured out, maybe it could hurt them in a spot where you've got limited time, to be putting together a game plan, implementing it, and making sure you're not missing any holes here because that Georgia Tech team, they see a crease, they will take advantage of it. They are very, very explosive, even without Singleton and Rutherford.
100%. Looking forward to the future. Two teams with, quite frankly, a lot of moving pieces right now. Arkansas and Texas Tech are going to be playing in Memphis, Tennessee on Friday, December 27th. And Arkansas is favored by 1.5. Although this line keeps kind of flipping back and forth. I think it might be at 2 now, actually. Yeah, 2, 1.5. It's still at Arkansas minus 1.5, 2. So we'll pick it at 1.5. All right. Arkansas is missing quote unquote 3 starting offensive linemen in this game. They'll have 6 scholarship offensive linemen suited up. One of the starters that they're missing really didn't play most of the season because he was injured. He showed up at the end of the season, and got some snaps there. He's out of there. That's a big deal. Okay, that is a big deal. However, you had a month to kind of get that offensive line ready for this game.
And Sam Pittman is. There's one
An
head
offensive line
coach
guy.
you want out there. It's probably Sam Pittman.
Yeah. Now
Controlling the
Arkansas
offensive
fans
line.
might disagree with you based on previous performances of offensive lines. But I mean, Texas Tech's front's not necessarily super scary, and they're missing some guys there, and they're also missing their defensive coordinator and their offensive coordinator. And I, there's a lot of moving parts over there at Texas Tech. You're not going to have your quarterback, Baron Morton. You're going to have Will Hammond, who this show is very high on, by the way. I just think Landon Jackson, obviously, is going to be going to the draft. Or at least, like, I haven't actually read anything that confirms that, but I'm assuming he's not playing this game because, dear Lord, he's probably first round pick, if not like early day 2. But I don't know, and I know you're probably going to disagree with me here, but I kind of like Arkansas on this spot. I like a -1.5 here. I think that there's just as much moving parts as there is on Arkansas's offensive line. I think that there might be more for Texas Tech. I also think Josh Kelly is a bigger loss for Texas Tech. The Baron Morton Josh Kelly connection, losing that I think is bigger than any singular piece on the Arkansas offensive line.
Do you think? Do you think they can just Taj Brooks their way out of it by chance?
That's very possible. That's
I
very possible. Now, Arkansas's run defense
with Landon Jackson.
with Landon Jackson, right? It's fine. The metrics on it look really good. I think it's actually worse than like you want to believe it based on the numbers. I think that some of their scheduling that they drew in the SEC, you didn't play a lot of run heavy teams. And when teams did run the ball, it was with a lot of steam. So I do think that this could be a spot where Taj Brooks potentially takes over 120 plus yards. But that doesn't mean Arkansas can't put up points on this Texas Tech team either.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen. Yes, Josh Kelly. We've been high on him for a while. You've been high on him for a while. He's going to be probably one of our draft crushes because he's just freaking awesome. But we talked about this Texas Tech team back in the offseason as having a really good receiver room, right? Complete receiver room. Now, yes, Josh Kelly was the cream on top. He was the guy, the linchpin to make it all happen. Obviously, Micah Hudson, the guy that we thought we had expectations for before he had gotten hurt. And it kind of slowed down his freshman season there. Obviously, he's in the portal and gone. But you still got Douglas, still got Eakin, got the tight end there as well. Brooks out of the backfield. Listen, I think you're going to surround a guy in Will Hammond with enough. I think without Landon Jackson, I think it does, which is confirmed, by the way, that he's not going to be out there. It is a big deal, right? It is a big deal. Switching on the other side, too, right? This terrible, terrible defense, terrible passing defense of Texas Tech. Obviously, no Tim Durder gone, but can Arkansas really take advantage of it without Andrew Armstrong, right? Without Luke Oz, right? Without Isaiah Satagna, right? A couple of your offensive linemen. Are you going to be able to seriously attack it and take advantage of it? And now maybe you can just Taylon Green and Jaquin Jackson, and I don't know if Braylon Russell's playing the game or not, but I guess he's coming back. You can just kind of do that to win. It'll be very interesting. I think both these teams will have similar game plans to win this game, and we'll see what happens. I do worry about Arkansas's ability to practice as well with how many transfers are gone. 28 going, a couple more opting out. How healthy are you, right? I think it's something to think about. I just cannot get myself to back Arkansas in this game. I might regret it. I could see them winning by 2 touchdowns. Yeah, I can absolutely see that. But I also, more times than not, I just worry how prepared they're going to be for this game. And I still think Texas Tech has a chance to get a win. And we also know Texas Tech and Arkansas does too. But Texas Tech cares about their bowl games. They really do. And I think this will be a big one here over the SEC for them.
Yeah, it would be. Um, I do think and this is not a best bet for me by any stretch. Your point about the ability to practice, I think, is a very, very valid one, right? Particularly on the offensive line, right? Defensive line, where you also don't just lose Landon Jackson. You also lose another decent edge rusher on that defensive line as well. So,
De Villiers.
yep, yeah. I don't know. I guess you're right. Offensively, they're gonna have to run the ball. Taylor Green. The other part of it too is Taylor Green's been banged up all year. You're
That's
gonna get a full go Taylor Green that's probably gonna get 15 to 20 carries. So we'll see what he does with that. And Isaiah Tesla still pretty solid as well. We'll see what other receivers they're able to scrape out of there. But you also had Andrew Armstrong was banged up early this season. Like Taylor Green has played some games without him. So I don't know. I think Texas Tech, you're right, is going to be ready for this. Uh, and I do think they care about it a lot. But how prepared can you be when you lose both of your coordinators like they did? I don't know. I think this is a really interesting matchup. So, one of many that we've talked about this week. So, or for this week's bowl slate. So, one that I'm definitely gonna be looking to keep my eye out for, right? And I'm excited. I'm excited. Not one that like my perspectives on these teams don't really change depending on the outcome of this game. You know, it's not like, oh, Arkansas is a better team than we thought they were this year. Or Texas Tech is a worse team or a better team than we thought they were this year. This is a game where there's a lot of shit going on, all right? But it's just going to be a fun, entertaining football game. So I'm
absolutely.
excited for that. Holiday Bowl, Syracuse, Washington State. It is a bummer that John Mateer is not playing this game because I do think that there's stuff to be had on this Syracuse defense. Syracuse has been pretty opportunistic on the defensive side of the football. Kyle McCord's been awesome, right? Way better than anyone could have ever anticipated for him. For them, I mean, they got a Heisman vote, more Heisman votes than Will Howard, so that's saying something. Um, Not that I'm trying to start a narrative or anything at all, but because I'm definitely not. But this line is 16.5 for good reason, and I'll lay it for 16.5 with Syracuse. By the way, this Washington State defense is garbage. And I'll let you talk about their offense more because I think you have a little bit more to say about their offense, particularly at that quarterback spot. But they are garbage on the defensive side of the football. They have absolutely gotten shredded by teams that are less talented than they are, right? Teams that are significantly less talented than they are. Oregon State, a team that struggled basically all year offensively, they put up 41. New Mexico put up 38. Utah State put up numbers. Boise State absolutely clapped you. San Jose State put up numbers, right? The one thing that kind of like held this Washington State resume together all year, where you could look back and be like, okay, like maybe this is just a good football team, was a Washington team that was still early in the season adjusting to a lot of portal changes, right? Then ended up playing a little bit better football down the stretch. That was at a neutral site too, I believe. And then that Texas Tech game where I think you really just caught Texas Tech on a bad day at home in Pullman. And that was week 2 of the season, right? So I look at Washington State, they're trending down for me, right? First of all, losing to Wyoming at home. I get it. If you go to Laramie and you lose, whatever. You lose to Wyoming at home, you're on my stink alert radar. Okay. Maybe this is a giant trap, but I'm laying 16.5 with Syracuse, and I'm not going to think about it too hard because I think Kyle McCord is going to shred this football team.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you here too. I'm going to lay the points with Syracuse. This is a spot where, honestly, I hope I'm wrong. I hope Washington State gets a win here, external to what's going on in this game here.
No Jake Dickert. I didn't even mention that.
Says you got no head coach, no offense coordinator, no defense coordinator. quarterback coach, running back coach. Like it is a mess, right? So how are you going to be able to piece it all together? And that's for Pete Kaligas to figure out. Their defensive tackle coach obviously bleeds Cougar Red, which I love. Um, yeah, man, damn, is it tough? My question here is, how many players are going to be playing? And I was trying to find answers, work through that. You've got 27 known players in the portal, right? Which is a staggering amount, right? 11 of those are starters, by the way. Pretty big deal. Only 5 are committed right now. So my question is, I figure if you're committed, you're probably not playing in the bowl game, more so
Mm-hmm.
because if you're Arizona, if you're Vanderbilt, if you're Oklahoma, obviously now you're not playing, but if you're TCU and Utah, you got these guys on these teams. I don't think you're letting them play because you don't want them to get hurt. You want them to get on your campus, start learning your offense, blah blah, blah all that good stuff. Regardless, though, there's still at least 22 players that are uncommitted, and I don't know if it's because they haven't found the right spot yet or whatever for all of them, but I do wonder how many are going to be playing, and I hope some of them do play, right? But at quarterback for Washington State, you're going to have Zevi Akos. I think that's how you said it. He's a guy who honestly competed with John Mateer in fall camp. He was a 3-year starter in the FCS for Bryant University. He was Big South Offensive Player of the Year. He's going to have eligibility for next year. So it sounds like he's going to be the guy going forward for Washington State, assuming things don't change there. So this is, first of all, a good spot for your fans to see what you have for your coaching staff, the new coaching staff next year, to see what you have with him. Obviously, you're going to have the short end of the stick because you're probably not going to have your running back. You're not going to have Chris Hudson, right? You're not going to maybe have your left tackle, whatever it may be, your right tackle, excuse me. But Kyle Williams is the guy that has to go off because the Syracuse defense is gettable for sure. But unfortunately, I just don't see it happening. I think Kyle McCord could have 400. I see Meeks, Pena, Gadsden, all the weapons they have. I see Quint Allen running all over that defense, unfortunately. So much has gone on. I do think this Syracuse team, I'm not worried about stinker alert at all. Fran Brown is pretty dialed in, and he said, we don't opt out here. We don't opt out around here, which I freaking love for his program. I think it's awesome. They're pretty relatively healthy. This is a team that's got a lot of momentum. This was a very intriguing matchup. I think,
A couple weeks ago.
2 weeks, 3 weeks ago when it came out, was going to be awesome. The old Pac-12, ACC, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is right now it's not great for Washington. This, I believe, is the second biggest spread for a bowl so far, bowl season. I think Army's at 17 right now, so it's closing in there, and that's because Army had to play a fill-in team, a 5-7 Louisiana Tech team. So, yeah, unfortunately, I'll go Syracuse here, and probably be putting it on my best bets. So you have to check that out when we get to it. But yeah, it's tough right now for Washington State.
Well, there's always, and we'll say this just in case I'm right, okay? There's always, every year, a quarterback or two that become bowl game legends, okay?
Yeah. Caden Velkamp for Western Kentucky.
Miller Moss last year, right? Like rolling into next season. There are spots and teams, offenses that are capable of plugging in a quarterback and potentially having them do well. And this isn't just some random, I mean, maybe random to a lot of folks here, but a lot of experience under center in college football. Not at the FBS level, like we talked about, but there is a chance that this offense does some things with that Goss at quarterback. There is a chance that he does some things. Not saying they're going to win because I like Syracuse a lot here, minus 16.5. But if there were things to get stinky, I could definitely see a situation where he does play well. Or even like a 3-touchdown loss, right? Like I could see him throwing for 320 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, maybe like
42-21.
Yeah, having to do something, right? Having to make plays, maybe forcing some errors that maybe shouldn't be made. But this guy was competing with John Mateer, who, by the way, was phenomenal this year. Will be playing football at Oklahoma next year.
One of the
Yeah,
early Heisman favorites.
yeah, I gotta believe he's pretty decent at football. So don't be fooled. All right, don't be fooled heading into this game. But I say don't be fooled, and then I'm gonna put cold hard-earned cash on Syracuse minus 16 and a half.
Well, the funny thing is now, and I'm to play that not play devil's advocate here. I just want to make a little comment here on when coaches and like it comes out how competitive, right? The job was for QB1, right? You were remember Jameis Winston back in Florida State and how competitive it was with Jacob Coker and how that really was never a conversation or never really competition. And then Drake May and was it Jacoby Griswold, right? And
Uh,
they're back and forth.
it was Connor.
No.
Oh,
No,
it was
Connor's
it
young.
was Criswell. It was
It was
Criswell.
Griswold. Yeah. Because Drake May
Are we
would be a
sure? 'Cause
senior
I
right
thought
now.
Criswell transferred in 2020. I thought Criswell just transferred.
He transferred back. He was at
Okay, I see. Oh,
regardless.
I see what you're saying.
He
I
was
see what
I
you're
went
saying.
to Arkansas, came back. Regardless, I do think this is a spot where they seem to be pretty high on him there. If you go over to some of the Cougar fans and insiders in that program, so it's going to be awesome. I like you said, I'm glad you brought that up. Where this is absolutely a spot where you're going to learn a lot about this team going into 2025.
Last bowl game we're going to talk about today, the Las Vegas Bowl. USC playing against Texas A&M. Two teams that I think, one team certainly didn't meet expectations, even though Vegas odds would tell you that they were maybe going to win 6 or 7 games. In USC, yeah, the program is. Lincoln Riley's in a lot of trouble. All right, I didn't know that we were going to be saying this at this time this year, but he's in a lot of trouble. You're looking at Texas A&M team, on the other hand. Expectations were recalibrated, right? Like midway through the season, you're 7-1. Okay, you're in first place in the SEC. Your expectations as a fan, okay, got recalibrated in that moment. Okay, when the reality was, this was probably an 8 or 9 win football team to begin with. It hurts the way that you lost because if you won any of those last 3 SEC games, you would be playing in the SEC championship in a rematch against Texas. Fortunately, that did not happen. But yeah, A&M really key opt outs that you're looking for in this one are just on the defensive side of the football. That'll be Nick Gordon, Shamar Turner, and Shamar Stewart. And it gives you an opportunity to really look at some of these young guys that you have and see what you have for next year, especially on the interior at 3 tech, right? You like what you have it up with Albert Reed just there at 1 tech. What do you have at 3 tech, right? What do you have on the edge with Rylan Kennedy? I happen to believe that Rylan Kennedy's pretty good. Okay, but and then I guess on the other side, like, yeah, it's a little bit messier on the USC side. This line's 3.5, by the way, in favor of A&M, and maybe a little bit biased to me, but I'm not sure that it's enough.
I'm with you here too. I really don't. I'm curious to see USC's defense, right? Because
Yes.
I think a lot's made of the wide receiver position and Miller Moss going, Mason Murphy going off to Auburn, right tackle, and what's going to happen there on the offensive side of the ball. Who's going to play quarterback next year for USC? Sure. Like what? I'll trust Lincoln Riley to figure that out going into 2025. I want to see that defense, right? Continue to, I think, play okay, right? Honestly, the metrically or statistically, they're not great, but I think eye test tells you this defense got better from last year, right? And that was the goal, one of the goals, right? Obviously, didn't lead to more wins, whatever. I know USC fans that probably won't make you happy, and it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. But I think it's something to build on potentially. You've got both your safeties playing, Achille Arnold, Kamar Ramsey. I think Ramsey's coming back next year, which is awesome for you. You've also got the nickel back, Greedy Vance playing against a wide receiver core, and I think a quarterback for Texas A&M, right, that going to miss some of his guys. And we've seen him potentially struggle at spots there when he needs to make plays with his arm. And obviously, I do think, having a nice break, having time to digest, and he's one of those young quarterbacks that this bowl break and bowl prep is going to help a lot, I think. So I expect him to come out and play well. I'm going to take A&M to win, but I want to see some growth there and some guys for USC playing well. How about a guy like Desmond Stevens, young kid there out of USC, very good athlete, very young kid there, inexperienced. I get that, but listen, I think he can do some good things going forward. Maybe he shines in this bowl game. It'll be very interesting. It'll be very, very interesting. You've got two programs that I think are trending in different directions, off-season wise, off-season momentum. I think A&M's got some nice momentum around them. I think USC. Now, who knows what's really going on behind the scenes there? Is it, maybe for the best? Is it maybe for the worst? Who knows exactly? But it's optically it doesn't look great right now. A win would go a long way, I think, for USC, but also A&M. I think they also need to win this football game. You skid it down the stretch there, right? Like build some momentum back up, get your fan base going rowdy again. You saw how well Marshall Reed played in that game, even in a loss against Oklahoma State last year, and how that built a lot of momentum and confidence in him to eventually take over the starting spot this year, right? Like these bowl games matter, right? I do think a win does matter for A&M as well, though. But I'll be interested to see some young guys, some young wide receivers, some young defensive linemen, guys that have been buried on the depth chart, maybe have a chance to grow and see what they can do.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, real quick.
having your
Yeah.
starting offensive line is a big deal.
And they're coming back for next year, right? It's the word on the street. So
Oh yeah.
that's a big build some momentum. Build some momentum. I do want to ask you this: who is a guy for A&M that is going to see more run in this game that you feel like you're excited to see? Where you're like, yeah, this guy, I think he's got some juice. I think he has some talent, whatever it may be. He's been buried behind somebody, or you're curious to see how his development's going and whatnot. Who can be a big contributor moving forward for A&M?
It would have to be Rylan Kennedy, who I mentioned earlier, like at edge rusher. Like he was probably the most efficient pass rusher for A&M this year. Like, and that's not even an exaggeration. And he's coming in right in the third, fourth quarter with fresh legs, right? So I get that, okay. But he is long, he is fast, he is aggressive, right? Some stuff definitely learned there in the run game, but he's not a liability there, right? So watching him play three downs is going to be really interesting. And then the last guy, I guess I'll talk about offense. I mean Terry Bussey, right? Who you've seen never get more than like really 30, 25, 30 offensive snaps, right, all year. So it'll be interesting to see like what they want him to do, right, moving forward, because that DB room is pretty loaded and it's young, right? So, and you're bringing in a lot of portal receivers. Like, what is Terry Bussey's role going to be for this team moving forward? And I really don't think they have an answer for it yet, and I think they want to find out more in this game, right? Every game's a data point for him, right? And I'm not, truthfully, I'm not ready to sell out on him being an elite player, right? Like, what does he do well, right? Is he an elite route runner? No, not yet, right? He's still working on that. Is he an elite coverage cornerback? Well, we don't know. We haven't seen him play in an SEC game or at all at corner, really. We saw him at spring practice. He looked pretty good in one-on-one drills, but that's it. That's all we've seen. What is he going to do moving forward? So I think he'll play a lot. I don't think he'll play both ways, but I think he'll play a lot on offense.
Yeah, that'd be
So
absolutely interesting to watch here. I'll go one for USC here for our USC fans. So I'm looking for the running back. Right, Brian Jackson comes in with some opportunity. Jaquavius Marks off the NFL. Obviously, Joyner in the portal there. Is he going to Texas Tech, if I'm not mistaken? A big pickup for them after Taj Brooks and his future. But Brian Jackson's a freshman, right? Coming out of Texas, right? Played 6A ball. Pretty talented kid. I'll be interested to see here what he can do against a pretty stingy defense there for A&M. Even missing some guys there in the run game. It would be nice to see some juice there and see what you got. Obviously, you got Eli Sanders coming in, a couple of young guys I know they like in this recent recruiting cycle. But yeah, help your quarterback out, especially if you are missing Deuce Robinson.
that, let's head over to the counter. I mean, so far this bowl season, we're kind of killing it here with the best bets. I'm right now 3-2-1. Okay, you are 5-1-0 right now. Absolutely schmurdering it. My wins: Memphis -4.5, Cal UNV under 50.5, Florida -13.5. I push with Ohio -3. We both had that push. How brutal was that against Jacksonville State? Just Parker Navarro being our hero, and then you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. I mean, unbelievable. And then my loss is SB +8.5, which Never mind. I'm not gonna play that if then game, whatever, because that it is kind of stupid because they did lose by 28. So I'm not gonna play that game. But no. And then Indiana first half plus 4.5. That's another if then game that I could play there in that first half as well. And then me thinking off air that Notre Dame minus 3.5 in the second half was smart was also a gigantic mistake. And it was smart until the last 2 minutes in that game. So for you, 5-1 your winners. Tulane under 16.5 at minus 104, by the way, might I add. Florida minus 13.5, which we were both on. Free. Can't believe that line dropped down to 10. The double and triple unit on that game by us made me feel a lot better about my losses. Then you're on Notre Dame, Indiana under 51.5, Ohio State minus 7.5, and Tennessee team total under 19.5. And then your only loss was South Alabama minus 7.5, and might I add, was a backdoor cover. So you are absolutely on fire right now. And I know you've got plenty of plays here, so because you're hot, I'm gonna let you stay hot and kick us off here for the counter.
So yeah, seeing the board right now pretty darn well. Give me Bowling Green now. Listen, we're recording this. This is early Monday morning, right? But 2 in the morning local time for us. So we missed some line movement there. It's up to 7.5 here. No matter. I'll take it. I'll lay it with them. We talked about that video. We talked pretty in depth with, how we think they're going to put up a lot of points, and I think 7.5 is too small a number there down in Mobile for the 68 Ventures Bowl. We talked about potentially being another blowout this time in the MAC, the favorite of the MAC team there down in Mobile.
Yeah, I like that. I talked about that earlier, being potentially one of mine. Probably an all-fair play for me, day of, but uh, yeah, I just couldn't get to put it on my list. But I like it a lot. I think you're gonna win that one. Uh, I'm gonna go over. Give me Navy team total under 20.5 against Oklahoma. I sorry guys, I don't see it with Navy right here. And yeah, you can lose Danny Stutzman, you can lose Billy Bowman. I still think that Oklahoma has the dudes and the dogs to stop Navy from getting in the end zone 3 times. So, and again, it's probably going to be shorter because both teams are going to be running the ball, by the way, with Oklahoma's wide receivers continuing to be hurt. Yeah, I think it's going to be tough for Navy to put up over 20.5 points. I think they're going to be relying on explosive plays, which could happen, right? Those could happen. But I just don't see it. Give me Navy team total under 20.5.
Yeah, adding on to that, Dejon Terry, defensive tackle for Oklahoma, he's playing, which we didn't talk about. That's a big one for Oklahoma there, especially stopping that offense of Navy. I'll stick in that game there. Stick with the Armed Forces Bowl down in Fort Worth. I'll go Oklahoma -3. I can't believe
Boom.
that line.
I'm with you.
Let's go. I can't believe that line dropped to 3, which is crazy. And we were trying to figure out what happened, and maybe it's a uber trap line, but I still can't believe it's that low. I think Oklahoma comes out firing, ready to go, and gets a win there. I think if you're under Navy team total hits, I still feel pretty good about what Oklahoma can do, covering 3 points.
Yeah, I agree. 17-7 game. That's all we need, right? Come on. I'm gonna go with San Jose State first half -2.5.
Wow.
And the reason for that is I like 3.5, right? But I don't want San Jose State to be up, 21.5, and then only to blow a lead to one of the best second half football teams in the entire country. In fact, one of the best second half football teams just in the last couple of games. They're putting up numbers. Charlotte, 31 points in the third quarter. I want to say Army, they also put up maybe 17 in the third quarter. They're putting up numbers, right, in that third quarter that kind of scares me a little bit. And I do like San Jose State's matchup against South Florida a lot. So, yeah, I'm going to take San Jose State first half -2.5.
Well, and especially, yeah, I like that there. It's more of a safer play, I think, especially with the secondary pieces out for San Jose State there. We talked about that. Yeah, I'm going to go to the MAC here. This will be famous Idaho Potato Bowl. This will be Monday afternoon. Give me NIU -3.5. Again, another line that crossed a key number. Kind of getting screwed when we're picking these out. Should have sent it out on Twitter beforehand. But I'm not worried here. We talked about a lot here. I think this NIU defense is going to show up and play pretty damn well. They'll dominate up front. I think their quarterback should get more credit than he is getting, and I still think they'll be able to run the football against Fresno State there.
Yeah, I like it. Not something that I could hop on because again, two of their losses were with Holstat quarterback.
Yeah.
However, um, I did lean that way, right? I picked them on the show -3.5. If that line's at 2.5, right, I think I could definitely be talked into it. But I do think Fresno State, with the familiarity of that stadium and that region, I think it could be. I don't know. You never know. So it was just a weird stay away for one for me. So um, I'm gonna go over to the Holiday Bowl. We talked about it a little bit. Syracuse -16. Let's do it. Let's lay it. Let's not even think about it.
I'll cash that with you too.
Yeah, let's go, dude. For all the reasons that we talked about, Washington State missing John Mateer. Do we believe Zevi Eckhouse could be Eckhouse? Sorry, could be a good quarterback. Eckhouse. I'll call him Eckhouse. That sounds right. If he wants to correct me, he can do that. I think he can be a good quarterback, right? You are potentially missing a lot of players, and you did talk about how many of them are actually not going to play, right? Because you got 27 in the portal, 5 committed, right? You gave us that little tidbit in that segment there when we talked about the Holiday Bowl, but this Washington State defense is so garbage, man. Give me Kyle McCord to just absolutely shred them. And Fran Brown, and this is the tidbit that you gave us, his exact quote saying, "We don't opt out around here." When you said that, that made me feel a lot better about my conviction about Syracuse.
Yeah, I'm all the reasons I'm on it too. Even if you didn't have Dickert, like this line moved a ton, right? And I wish we hopped on it earlier. I was thinking about this line before all that stuff went down, and even with the big line movement, even with all that stuff going on, yeah, I still feel pretty confident to hop on that. There, my last play here is going to be in the Rate Bowl, I believe is what it is. Yep. We talked about it. We split on this one here. I'm gonna go Kansas State -6.5. Key number right there. That's what we picked it at, but that's what I'll take it as well. Listen, I think they're gonna play complimentary football. I think they're not gonna turn the football over. I do not trust Ethan and Kirk Soraka. I think there's a significant coaching edge there in game for Kansas State. And yeah, I think that's all I really need to go for.
Yeah, I'm fading you right here. I'm all over Rutgers +7, and you know, if Kansas State wins by 7, then I guess that'd be cool. I'd be all right with the push. You can cash your win right there. But Antoine Raymond, solid if Monanga is not playing. Ethan Kaliak-Manis, over 1,500 yards, 11 total touchdowns, 1 interception in his last 6 games. He's playing okay football. Not to mention, Rutgers offensively in general is just finding ways to get into the end zone consistently these last 5 weeks, albeit against lesser Big Ten teams. But I do think two teams kind of trending in opposite directions right now in terms of like Rutgers, strong start, dipped in the middle, kind of a strong finish. Kansas State, strong start, and just kind of slowly fading away here on us right now. And when things get muddy, right, like they did against Kansas, like they did against Houston, kind of like they did against Tulane early in the season, like stuff can happen, right? I think that Rutgers can definitely not only cover, but I think they can win this football game. So, and I don't know that betting on Rutgers in bowl games has been all that good these last couple years, but yeah, I know you talked about you thinking Avery Johnson's going to take care of the football. If there's a team that takes care of the football very well, it is going to be the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. So I'm not worried about the turnover margin flipping there for my Rutgers Scarlet Knights.
Listen, that's
Yeah, so
the
5 bets
first
from
time
each
all
of us.
year, right? Real quick, sorry. That's
First
the
time
first
all
time all
year
year.
we're fading each other. It's a good time to do it, I guess. Merry Christmas. So
Yeah.
thank you all for tuning in to I guess our preview of the week 2 of the bowl season. So make sure you guys are liking this video if you like the content. Subscribe if you want to be here for the rest of the way, college football playoffs, rest of the bowl season, and more. we're gonna have crazy stuff in the transfer portal to talk about. I mean, coaching carousel. I think we do some of the best coaching carol coverage. Um, of a lot of independent covers of the college football sport. I think our bowl season coverage, I think, reflects that as well. And we do some of the best work around here this time of year. So make sure you guys are locked in and keep it up with Redshirt Sophomore. So thank you so much. CD, anything on that?
Yeah, well, you said it all. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone there. Safe travels if you are traveling, and enjoy the bowl games, man. This week, there's no college football playoffs. There's no distraction there. Do not let the ESPN guys, whoever the channels of these games are going to be, just strictly talk about the playoffs games. Enjoy these games for what they are. These kids work their tail off to get that 13th game to be playing in December. Let them enjoy it. A lot of times, it's their last time suiting up as an athlete. I love it. Just enjoy it there. Obviously, continue watching, continue subscribing, continue supporting like you guys have been doing our channel here.
And we'll see y'all in the next one.